Hi, everyone. Welcome to Advanced Studio Classroom's Art of English feature. I'm Peter. I'm the managing editor at Advanced Magazine.
Hi, I'm Linda. I'm the senior editor of Advanced Magazine.
And we have for you this month a portion, an excerpt from the great American novel Tom Sawyer, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, written by Mark Twain, one of the great American novelists, particularly known for his humor. And I think you're going to see that in the passage that we have for you today.
Yes, they definitely will. And just a little bit of background about Mark Twain. That's not actually his real name. It's his pseudonym. Right. Yes.
That's right.
So it's a fake name or his pen name that he uses on his novels. But his real name was Samuel Clemens.
Yes, Samuel Longhorn Clemens. A wonderful sort of 19th century American name. And did you know why he used a pen name at first?
I mean, I think that's something that authors do, but it's interesting where he got his pen name from. Mark Twain is actually a nautical term. So he was a riverboat pilot at one point in his life. And
right,
so
one of those big boats with the paddle wheel in the back and the big smokestacks.
That goes along the Mississippi River. And he did that for several years. And so he was quite familiar with the river and operating a riverboat. And so this term, it means like a certain depth of water.
You're right, yeah. Mark, you'd hear them shouting out when they were measuring the water, the ship hands on the boat. Mark blah, Mark blah, Mark Twain, and that meant a certain depth of water that they were about to enter into. But today we are reading from Tom Sawyer, published in 1876. The book is set in the 1840s in a small made-up town in the state of Missouri.
But it's meant to resemble his hometown as he grew up
in
Missouri.
It's not like a fantasy land hometown of some sort, but if you look for, the town is called St. Petersburg. If you look it up, try to find it, you won't find it. It's just created by Mark Twain, but it is obviously based on reality, on Twain's own experience growing up.
Yeah, and he would have grown up in the 1840s, so that would be a reflection of his childhood. Right.
So with that, though, we have some study questions, of course, as you can see. Let's go right in and read the excerpt, and then we'll look at some of the English, we'll look at some of the questions, and just get to know this a bit better. So, Mark Twain, Tom Sawyer.
Tom gave up the brush with reluctance in his face, but alacrity in his heart. The retired artist sat on a barrel in the shade close by, dangled his legs, munched his apple, and planned the slaughter of more innocents. There was no lack of material. Boys happened along every little while. They came to jeer, but remained to whitewash. By the time Ben was fagged out, Tom had traded the next chance to Billy Fisher for a kite. And when he played out, Johnny Miller bought in for a dead rat and a string to swing it with. And so on, hour after hour. And when the middle of the afternoon came, from being a poor, poverty-stricken boy in the morning, Tom was literally rolling in wealth. He had 12 marbles, part of a jews-harp, a piece of blue bottle glass to look through, a spool cannon, a key that wouldn't unlock anything, a fragment of chalk, a tin soldier, a couple of tadpoles, 6 firecrackers, a kitten with only one eye, a brass doorknob, a dog collar but no dog, the handle of a knife, 4 pieces of orange peel, and a dilapidated old window sash. He had a nice, good idle time all the while, plenty of company, and the fence had 3 coats of whitewash on it. If he hadn't run out of whitewash, he would have bankrupted every boy in the village.
Okay, yes, this is, hopefully you can already see Twain's humor in this passage. But let's go to the discussion question, our first discussion question here. What are some of the unusual items that the boys give to Tom?
Yeah, we have a long list that I just read from the excerpt. And just to talk a little bit about Tom Sawyer, these really are his adventures. Like, he's a very adventurous boy and very mischievous as well, as we can see in this excerpt. So he is actually being punished, right? So he has to whitewash the fence for, I think, getting into a fight. He got into a fight and he also came back late, and he's always doing things he's not supposed to be doing. But he got caught, and so he has to whitewash the fence as punishment. And so instead of seeing it as punishment, he sees it as an opportunity to make something, like to get wealth out of it. And his wealth is embodied by all of these objects. And it includes things that are living, animals, and also things that are just like pieces of things that don't seem really valuable, but to him, I guess to boys of that age, they would be valuable. So let's look at some of these things.
Right. 12 marbles. We all know what a marble is, a little bit of circular glass. Part of a jews-harp. A jews-harp, also known as a mouth organ, is one of those things, it's hard to describe without doing an imitation of it, but you see it, it's a little bent piece of metal with a single bit of wire or string. You put it in your mouth, it goes bow, boing, bow, 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 bow. And I don't know how you actually make music out of it, but it shows up in American music from time to time, sort of traditional American music. Yeah. And he had part of a jews-harp, so he didn't even have
the whole thing.
Harp.
Yeah,
he just had part. Which part? Maybe he didn't have the pion part. But nevertheless, it was part of a jews-harp.
Yeah, he could probably make some kind of music or sound using it.
Right. A piece of blue bottle glass to look through. A nice piece of colored glass. A spool cannon. Do you know what a spool cannon is?
So the spool was from a cotton reel, or it could be from a spool of thread. So you put elastic on that, and then you would turn it into a slingshot. So you could put items in that and then like slingshot it to hit something.
Right, because the center of the spool is hollow, so it's like a tube or the barrel of a gun, and so you make a little slingshot out of it, and they called it a spool cannon.
Yeah.
He also has a key that wouldn't unlock anything. And that's a good example of Twain's humor. That's an example of what we call dry humor. It's not, laugh out loud, funny, some guy slipping on a banana peel, obvious humor like that. It's more just this sort of more reserved, quiet, but still funny, still humor. A key. He had a key that wouldn't unlock anything. Wow. It's humor is tricky, as we'll see in the second question. But
I think it would still have value to Tom or to whichever boy was carrying it.
See, that is what Twain understands so well, is he understands that in childhood, something like this does have value. It has great value. Tom Sawyer certainly thought it had value. He allowed someone to give him this key in exchange for painting the fence. Now, he didn't want to paint the fence in the first place, of course, but he was making it seem like that was a valuable thing to do, and that was a worthy trade to get, a key that wouldn't unlock anything.
And also, it's probably something shiny, and anything shiny like the piece of glass, would be attractive to small boys. They would value it.
A fragment of chalk. That's maybe the first actually practical thing that he's got there. A little piece of chalk. You can ride on the sidewalk with that. A tin soldier, little play soldier. Yeah. A couple of tadpoles. Linda, what's a tadpole?
Yeah, so a tadpole is a baby frog. So it's when frogs are first born, they're in the form of tadpoles. So he had tadpoles that would grow into frogs, and that is something that he could definitely treasure.
Yes,
boys
frogs
at that age,
at that age in that part of the country, and even today probably, frogs are wonderful toys to have and living creatures to have, but they're also just great fun. 6 firecrackers. Okay, that's something.
That would be quite valuable.
Exactly.
You make a lot of noise with firecrackers.
A kitten with only one eye. You know, it's almost kind of sad, but that's what adds a kind of richness to Twain's humor. It's not that he's trying to just make us sad or anything, but there's a kitten with only one eye. Well, at least it's still got another eye, At least it's still alive. Tom's got it now. He can care for it. So it's kind of that mix between funny and sad that Twain and most good writers can convey through their writing.
Right. It's still an animal that you can play with. And it might be a stray because it just has one eye, probably got into a fight, but still, he would
it's not
treasure
a
that.
stray anymore because it's with Tom. A brass doorknob. I can't think of any real use for that, but, it's shiny and it's heavy and it's a good weight, maybe.
Just like the key that he has that doesn't unlock anything.
A dog collar, but no dog. The way Twain tells us that, again, is part of the humor.
Yeah, maybe you could use the dog collar on the kitten.
Yeah, he might actually come in handy with the kitten. The handle of a knife, not a knife, which would be really neat, but the handle of a knife. But again, the child's imagination can create the blade for it, as long as you have the handle. And as those of you who have any experience with knives may know, some knives, along with their handles, are really very nicely made. It could be hand leather stitched in some way. And so there's something about, as long as you have the handle, then in a way you also have the knife in your imagination.
Yes, all you need is your imagination. Yeah. And the last
4 pieces of orange peel. Linda, what can you do with orange peel?
Well, I could use it to clean, but I'm sure they don't have that in mind.
Probably not. Yeah. But I think you can eat them. I think they can be candied, which is a way of baking something so that it becomes crunchy and sweet.
You can also dry it out and it becomes can become a spice. Yeah.
And a dilapidated old window sash. Dilapidated meaning old, almost falling apart in some way. Window sash, that is basically what we would think of as a window frame. It's the part of it's the wood, or these days usually the metal, that holds the glass, that holds the pane of glass, and it's what you hold to raise the window up or to open it to the left or to the right. What you're grabbing is the sash.
I always thought the window sash was the fabric that goes across the window.
Sash also can mean something that you wear across your body for formal occasions. We would say the winner of the beauty contest wore a pink sash across her dress that had, winner written onto it. So that may be what Linda's thinking of, but a window sash specifically is the frame that holds the glass. And in Tom's day, it would have probably gone up or down based on a weight built into the window that allows you to raise the window or lower it. So he's basically got a wooden frame here with no
That's falling apart.
That's falling apart. But again, in the mind of a child, that could be a painting of some sort. It's a toy. It's something to be used. What we see here, I think, is perhaps the great literary example of the phenomenon of how you give on Christmas morning or for a birthday, you give a small child this really, really nice toy, very like a race car or something, and 10 minutes later, they're playing in the box that it came in.
Yeah.
This is whatever that is in the child's mind that prefers the rough, raw material to the actual finished toy or object, whatever it may be. That's what Twain is sort of getting at here with this description, because he describes it as Tom rolling in wealth. Now, you can tell that Twain is kind of winking at the adults who are reading this. He was rolling in wealth with his dead rat and his dog collar with no dog and his broken window sash. But for Tom, this was wealth. This was much better than painting the fence and
or maybe even getting money.
Maybe even getting money. Twain uses financial terms. He says he was rolling in wealth, and then right in the very last sentence of the excerpt, he says if he, Tom, hadn't run out of whitewash, he would have bankrupted every boy in the village. He would have continued to gather this wealth.
He would get something from every single boy walking past him. That they could not only do his job for him, his punishment for him, but he'd also get something more out of it. So Tom was a very clever kid.
Yeah.
He's very industrious.
Yeah. Let's see. We've sort of talked about the humor. Let's go to question number 3, or at least let's touch on it briefly because I'm kind of curious, actually. Can you make a list in English of unique things you valued as a child? Now, we all had things that we valued as a child. For me, it was like baseball cards and comic books. But, lots of us have baseball cards and comic books, and that's great. But we're looking here with this question for things like a piece of blue bottle glass to look through, something unique, something that you wouldn't necessarily buy in a store, but nevertheless, which for you was very precious. And like I say, I'm interested to hear what might be on Linda's list. I'll just give you one from my own list. I once had a rock with fossils in it. Now, when I say fossils, I don't mean like a dinosaur or anything like that. It was just some little prehistoric shell of some sort. But it was a fossil. And I was at that age where I was like, wow, this is a doorway to the past. This is a time machine. I've got an actual fossil. I'd read about them in school, of course. They show us films about them. And finally, I had one right in my hand, a rock that had a fossil in it. That was something I held on to for many years.
Well, I liked to collect shells. So even if they were broken, I know that probably didn't have any value, but to me, it had value. So I'd have a collection of shells that I collected from different beaches. And yeah, that was something that I treasured. And so all of these things that we treasure as children, they might not have any monetary value, but they have a lot of sentimental value.
Right, sentimental value, or, just they were useful props. In a way, children are always playing make-believe. Maybe not so much today since there's so much to do online and with video games and such, but certainly in Mark Twain's time, and I think even in Linda and my time when we were children, there was a lot of, children just have a lot of time on their hands, and you make your own fun, as they say, and you take something like a strange colored rock or something, or a broken window frame maybe that you find, or a knife handle without a knife.
Yeah, or a dog collar. Pretend you have a dog.
Collar, yes. And you make believe. You pretend. You create. Something that I used to have was I found a firework, a spent firework that someone had shot and it blew up and everything. But the frame it came in, the housing it came in, was shaped like a little rocket. And I found it on the beach like the night after the 4th of July back in my hometown. And I was like, oh, wow, I got a little rocket, And it wasn't as nice as a rocket that I could go and buy in the store. But there was something special about the way I just found it, and it was just for me in that way. And it was my little rocket.
Yeah, and you could use your imagination to send that rocket to space.
Right. And from there, a whole story, a whole world can be created. And that's something that Twain is good at throughout the book, capturing the way children view the world, the way children interact with each other in the world. And there's even a dramatic storyline to this particular book, to Tom Sawyer. It's not just these sort of incidents that are strung together. There is an actual larger story that takes place. So definitely encourage you to read Tom Sawyer if you haven't read it.
The Adventures of Tom Sawyer.
The Adventures of Tom Sawyer.
And the sequel, like his friend
That's right.
Huckleberry Finn. So Mark Twain also wrote a book about Tom Sawyer's good friend, Huckleberry Finn, in The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
Right, which is also a terrific book. And don't be surprised if you see that on a future installment of The Art of English. But I think that's all we have time for today, for this month. So thanks again for joining us. Again, if you haven't read Tom Sawyer, that's your next book. It's not too long, but it's longer than Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So give yourself a little time to read it. But it's shorter than Moby Dick.
Right. And catch us next month for the next edition of The Art of English.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye-bye.